Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into a source text with a truly radical claim that the history you were taught is a lie. I mean, really think about that for a second. The source text we're exploring today argues that our shared history wasn't an accident at all. It was meticulously designed. At the very center of this theory is a secret organization the text calls the Watch. They're presented as the true, unseen architects of our reality, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the claim of a fabricated history, then unmask its alleged mastermind, trace the secret empire he supposedly built, decode its secret language, and finally, take a look at the all-seeing eye that symbolizes its power. And don't worry, we'll point you to some extra material at the end. Okay, so first up, this whole idea of a fabricated history. The theory kicks off with this massive claim that the history we all learn in school is basically a carefully constructed illusion orchestrated from the shadows by the Watch. So you're probably asking, how could one group even pull that off? Well, the source points to a whole toolkit of methods. We're talking about engineering the world's major religions and hiding cryptographic signatures inside them, forging so-called ancient manuscripts to spark a renaissance that they could totally control, and even staging huge geopolitical events like the fall of Constantinople as a kind of strategic reset to move assets and knowledge exactly where they wanted them. Now, this is where it gets really wild. The theory introduces a central figure, a single mastermind who allegedly orchestrated the entire early modern age by operating under multiple identities all across the globe. The source code names this operative G and claims he lived simultaneously as three of the 15th century's most influential figures. He was Leon Battista Alberti, the Italian Renaissance architect. He was Nezahualcoyotl, the founder of the Aztec civilization. And he was Pachacuti, the architect of the Inca Empire. One man shaping three separate civilizations at the same time. And this quote, which is attributed to Alberti, is presented as the core philosophy of the Watch. It was Guy's personal mantra, this belief that a single, focused mind could will an entire project, or maybe even reality itself, into a whole new shape. But okay, how could one person's influence possibly last for centuries? Well, the text argues that G didn't just build monuments, he built a hidden empire of knowledge, one designed specifically to pass the mantle of control from one generation to the next. According to this theory, G's work didn't die with him. About a century later, a new lineage of operatives, we're talking big names like Sir Francis Bacon, John Dee, and Athanasius Kircher, allegedly inherited and expanded his whole mission. And the source frames these guys not as just thinkers, but as spy masters. Bacon is said to have weaponized the postal service for intelligence gathering. John Dee became the intellectual architect of the British Empire. And the polymath Kircher allegedly used his famous museum as a giant encrypted intelligence hub. This theory totally reframes even these esteemed institutions like the Royal Society. It presents them not as these organic movements of brilliant people, but as fronts designed to steer science in a specific direction and recruit the world's brightest minds for the Watcher's agenda. Now, controlling empires requires a lot more than spies. It requires controlling information itself. And according to this theory, the ultimate key to that control was cryptography. The strategy was supposedly a four-step process. First, you forge cryptic texts like the Voynich manuscript to create your narrative. Second, you encrypt new forms of ciphers to hide messages inside them. Third, you control the printing and distribution of all knowledge. And finally, you suppress any dissent by just framing it as irrational or crazy. And a theory presents the mysterious Voynich manuscript as the absolute prime example of this strategy. You know, that beautiful, uncrackable book? It's presented here as the ultimate artifact of information control. And here is where the theory really connects the dots. The manuscript's parchment dates to the exact time that G, as Alberti, was most active. And it was just before he published his revolutionary work on cryptography, literally inventing the first modern cipher. A little too convenient, right? This creates a direct lineage. You can draw a straight line from Alberti's 15th century cipher disk all the way to the Nazi Enigma machine, which used the exact same polyalphabetic principle. And of course, what happened when we broke Enigma? It led Alan Turing to develop the modern computer. And that lineage just keeps going. The Bletchley Park codebreakers, who studied both Enigma and the Voynich manuscript, went on to build today's major intelligence alliances. Yep, the CIA and the NSA. The implication here is huge. The modern surveillance state was born directly from Guy's cryptographic legacy.
So, this control wasn't just practical, it was symbolic too. The theory's final piece connects the watch's ancient symbols to our modern world of surveillance.
According to the text, the watch left its mark right out in plain sight. It starts with Alberti's personal emblem, a winged eye. Then you see that same symbol echo as the all-seeing eye on the U.S. Great Seal, in Masonic iconography, and even in art from the French Revolution. It's embedded in the very fabric of Western society. And here's the symbolic masterstroke. Alberti's winged eye is presented as the direct ancestor of modern surveillance. The eye in the sky was never just a metaphor. It was a plan, spanning centuries from a Renaissance emblem to today's omnipresent drone.
The theory then takes one final stunning leap. If our past is a controlled narrative, what if our reality itself is a kind of simulation? In this view, historical figures become agent templates, and those divine voices heard by prophets weren't gods. They were just lines of code.
And so, this explainer has presented the core arguments from a text that radically reinterprets history. It leaves us with a final provocative thought to chew on. If our past was designed, what does that say about our free will, and what does it mean for our future? Are we the players, or are we just part of the code?